Yeah, what's going on, everybody? I'm Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel. So we finally get to talk about a really awesome part of the Devil May Cry series. So no more kind of dilly-dallying around, let's just dive into it. You already know what it is.
Wanna know the name? Devil May Cry.
Devil May Cry 3 is the third game in the ongoing action series from Capcom, released on the PlayStation 2 back in 2005. The game is subtitled Dante's Awakening because this is actually a prequel to the original Devil May Cry, taking place about 10 years beforehand. Unlike its predecessors, however, DMC3 got a re-release on PlayStation 2 with the special edition in 2006. This version of the game added more content to it, including a new playable character, a new boss fight, and also quality of life tweaks to the core gameplay. Funny enough, there was a manga series for Devil May Cry 3 that was also released that was a prequel, setting up certain events that we see play out in the game. The manga had 2 volumes, with a third one that was planned out but never got released because the artist had quit midway through the project and never finished it. Honestly though, you don't need to read it before you play this game. Speaking of which, what's happening in this story within the DMC timeline? The plot here focuses on the big clash between Dante and his mysterious brother Vergil. Both are the sons of their father, the legendary Dark Knight Sparta, who saved the human race centuries beforehand. In the original DMC, we only got to see and hear of Vergil from the boss fights you encounter him. He's hardly important to the events of that game. However, Devil May Cry 3 does a little bit of retconning to his backstory, making him more integral to why Dante ends up becoming the way that he does. While these two are constantly fighting, a shadowy figure named Arkham works to resurrect a tower under a city nearby called the Temnin Nigru. This is a tower built by demon worshippers, and was eventually sealed away by Sparta. Arkham wants to use the tower to obtain Sparta's power and rule over both the human and demon worlds. Within all of this craziness, however, a young woman named Lady is on a mission to kill Arkham and eradicate the demons that have been appearing all around the tower, leading to a clash between everyone at the end. There's a ton more that happens, but it's safe to say that the plot of Devil May Cry 3 is far better than the previous game. But as a whole, does Devil May Cry 3 reinvigorate everything about the series to create a fun and stylish action game? Oh yeah, it really does.
I can already tell. Looks like this is gonna be one hell of a party!
So real talk, the story in Devil May Cry 3 is leaps and bounds better than what was happening in Devil May Cry 2. It just feels like the story was just figured out a whole lot better, and it feels a lot more concise than in that previous game. The central conflict between Dante and his brother Vergil, with everything else happening around them, is really at the heart of this game. It's just like really the big string that pulls you along throughout every single part of Devil May Cry 3, and I love it. I mean, seriously, they have a really great build up to the battle between Dante and Vergil, especially that first time. It just feels so good between the music, the slow build up as Dante goes up the stairs at the top of the tower, and then finally the big fight itself is just overall very awesome, and it's one of the big highlights of the entire series.
Whatever. At any rate, it's been a whole year since we last met. How about a kiss from your little brother? Or better yet, how about a kiss from this? So, this is what they call a heartwarming family reunion, eh?
You got that right.
But even with me saying that, I do have to give props for all the other secondary characters like Arkham and Lady and even Jester, where they get a little bit more screen time than some of the other previous secondary characters in the other Devil May Cry games. I actually like that because there's a little bit of something going on all over the place, not just one big main focus on Dante himself, which is cool, but still, the worlds of Devil May Cry is so much more bigger than what the games prior to this were actually making it out to be. And I'm glad to see that because we got all these characters that we could follow and actually pick our favorite ones. It's actually very, very cool. Now, as someone who is looking at all these games back to back, I do have to give some props for all the different fan service moments and nods to the original Devil May Cry. Again, this is a prequel to the first game, so not only are we seeing locations that we eventually get to see in Devil May Cry 1, we also get some fun nods and good fan service moments. You know, when Dante finally puts on the iconic outfit, when we see the, Sparta's sword for the very first time, which is the exact same sword that he has in Devil May Cry 1. It's little things like that which I feel like are very cool, it's very rewarding for the fans, and it's stuff that we just did not get in Devil May Cry 2. For whatever reason, they just chose to really go outlandish and far away from the series, especially from the previous game that was a hit. But here, they really brought things back in and really gave something to the fans that a lot of people still to this day really love. Okay, enough of the story stuff, we finally got through it. Let's talk about the big thing we all want to talk about, and that's the gameplay, because man, it feels so good. It's like, let's just dive into this because there is a lot to talk about with Devil May Cry 3's gameplay. Devil May Cry 3 is said to have brought the series back to form, and for the most part, this is very true. But it also does a few things for the series that really change things up going forward, for better or worse. The biggest part is the combat, which is honestly at an all-time high here. It's only made better by some really solid controls, and finally, a much better camera this time around. Thank God. Anyway, Dante has 3 different styles of fighting that not only showcase his personality, but open up a variety of amazing moves and attacks. You can use the Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger, and Royal Guard styles in combat. Each one has unique moves and attacks that let you fight in a variety of different ways with all of your weapons and firearms. But there's little to no crossover between them. Originally, you could only use one style within a mission. However, with the Nintendo Switch version of the game, it allows you to switch between styles during combat. Either way, however, you'll be focusing on one style at a time while you fight, mostly because each style can level up as you destroy enemies. This unlocks new actions in combat, allowing for bigger and more crazier combos. It's very fun to see what you could chain together between the different attacks, especially when it involves some pretty insane acrobatics. For me, I love using the Swordmaster style for those big damage combos, but the Gunslinger style is amazing when you want to deal damage in very flashy ways. Now that I mention it, Dante has a ton of weapons at his disposal this time, including some fan favorites and a few new ones that are pretty good. You could find new weapons in stages and obtain them by defeating bosses, but you're always getting something brand new and interesting as you progress through the game. My only major critique of Devil May Cry 3's gameplay has to be the bigger emphasis on the puzzles. Some stages have you running around gathering items, like you're doing a fetch quest, and those could drag on for a bit. In some instances, it might not always be clear where you need to go or revisit in order to progress, but luckily it's not to the point where you'll be lost for a long time. The puzzles themselves are not too difficult and mostly involve hitting something a few times or picking up an item and taking it to another location. There's still definitely fighting along the way, but I won't lie when I say a few spots do overstay their welcome. Even with that being said, Devil May Cry 3 has straight up had the best gameplay of the entire series at that time. There's just so much work that went into making the combat fun and complementing a far more interesting story. It simply shoots the previous 2 games out of the sky with how good it is. One thing I see a lot of people harp on, and you saw this a lot with some of the reviews back in the day for DMC3, is the difficulty. A lot of people say that the game is way too hard, and honestly, I don't really think so. I actually feel like compared to Devil May Cry 1 and 2, that this game actually has a better grasp on difficulty and challenge, especially because you have so many more tools at your disposal, and with the controls feeling so solid and responsive, Dante has a lot of more like free flow movement. You don't feel so stiff and kind of held down or held back because of the game's mechanics. I actually feel this way about the boss fights as well, which I feel like not only have great build-ups, not just the fights with Vergil, but like all the different boss fights in the game, but they're also, again, they feel manageable this time. They don't feel like, you know, they're cheap or they're overly difficult. They have like really annoying mechanics or things that get in the way of the core gameplay. I feel like the boss fights, again, they're challenging, they're difficult in some instances, especially in the harder difficulties, but they're never unfair. They're never like overly difficult. They're never like really annoying or frustrating to the point where it becomes unplayable. A lot of this is due to the revamped controls, like I said, are very responsive and very solid, and also the camera. My god, I cannot tell you guys how great it feels to go from the camera in Devil May Cry 2, which was all messed up, to this one, which still a little bit primitive by today's standards, but feels so much more better in comparison to DMC2. You're able to move the camera, it doesn't feel like the camera gets stuck in one position, it just looks and feels great and I could actually do all these crazy combos without having to worry about things getting all mucked up on screen. One more thing I want to mention is the firearms and all the different weapons that you get for Dante, which to me are still some of the best weapons, or at least the best arsenal from throughout the entire DMC series. You know, between the nunchucks, the different dual blades that are fire, the guitar, which is just from the vampire lady, even that crazy like gauntlets that you get, which also is used by Vergil in the game. I think that stuff is really freaking cool. There's a lot of variety here, and going between all the different weapons as you're building up these big combos, it just feels great and it looks great. And this is what we want as fans in a DMC game. Alright, so now that I splurged a little bit too much on the gameplay of Devil May Cry 3, let's talk about something else I think is actually really cool that not enough people really talk about, and that's the extra content, because there's some good stuff going on here, for real. Now, with all of my complaints about the previous Devil May Cry games, what we get here is exactly what I wanted to see done with unlocking bonus content. Devil May Cry 3 does a fantastic job with having lots of unlockables and bonus content to enjoy after you finish the game. There's alternate outfits to equip, production videos to watch, concept art and promo renders, and even the original teaser and E3 trailers for the game. It's like looking into a time capsule of everything that was going on for DMC 3 back then. Remember when games used to have a ton of unlockables and extra content without having to pay for DLC or other crazy stuff? Remember when that was the industry standard? I'm just saying, people, if you know, you know. Now, I have to mention that you get to play as Vergil in the special edition of Devil May Cry 3. However, to me, that counts as bonus content since it wasn't part of the original game. You actually need to finish the game first with Dante before you could use Vergil. But when you finally do, oh man! Vergil is a literal beast in combat using his Yamato sword and other weapons you see him fight with in the main game. My only issue is how there's only a few bonus cutscenes at the start, and everything else in the game with Vergil is identical to when you play with Dante. Nothing else brand new. I would have loved to see some remixed stages or different boss fights unique to Vergil, or heck, even a twist on the Vergil fight where you actually got to battle Dante instead. It's funny because they tried to do this by making the Vergil model in these fights look red, but it's still a Vergil boss fight. I'm just saying, it would have been real cool to fight a CPU Dante with all of its attacks that you had in the main game. Wishful thinking, I know. But like with Dante, you unlock a ton of outfits and other bonus material when you finish the game with Vergil. But is all of this still worth the time to do so? Honestly, yeah, I really think it is. I feel like you're earning a lot more in Devil May Cry 3 for the time that you're putting into playing it, and that's all I really wanted.
I'm sure you have time for one more game, right?
Why not? After all, we share the same blood. I'll just use more of yours to undo Daddy's little spell.
Unlike its predecessors, Devil May Cry 3 gives you early access to Stage Select right after you complete the first stage. This is a godsend for a lot of people, especially those that might hit a brick wall later on in the game. You could always go back to previous stages and grind it out for orbs, not only to improve the damage of your guns, but also to gain access to more Devil Trigger, better health, different actions from various weapons. This is actually really cool and super helpful for anybody that plays this game. You could also say the same thing about Bloody Palace mode, which makes a return in this game and it's just as good as it's ever been. However, you do have to complete the game at least once with Dante in order to gain access to it. But if you are going to be playing hard mode or Dante Must Die mode, or even Heaven and Hell mode, which is like a one-shot, one-kill mode for everything in the game, you're definitely going to want to have access to all those different abilities as well as all that extra health and Devil Trigger, because trust me, those things can get ridiculously hard. Now, I love how there's so much bonus content to unlock by finishing the game on all these different difficulty levels, but one thing I do really love that wasn't in the previous games was a code to unlock everything from the get-go. It does, however, prevent you from saving the game and also blocks out trophies and achievements and stuff, but if you just want to see all that extra content like the E3 trailer or any of the concept art and the bonus renders, you could do that very easily by just putting a code at the main menu. I actually really appreciate that. So after everything that I've said, can I recommend that you guys check out Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening? Hell yes! This game is still awesome as it was back in the day. It still is a lot of fun, so much better than the previous game, and I would even argue that it's even better than the first two games in general. I know a lot of people love Devil May Cry 1 for the novelty and the nostalgia, but still, I feel like Devil May Cry 3 took everything about the series up to that point and just did it better than the previous two games. It has fantastic controls, a whole lot of action, a ridiculously better story than the previous game, as well as also all this bonus content that you can unlock just for simply putting in the time to play the game. It's just something that I feel like I've always wanted within a full package of a game, especially for this series, and it's something that I think that a lot of you and many other people out there are really gonna dig. If you want to try out the game for yourself or just haven't played Devil May Cry 3 as of yet, you could get it in the Devil May Cry HD collection, which is available on all platforms, but you could also pick up the Nintendo Switch version, which has a couple of things that are different from the previous versions, including the ability, like I mentioned, to switch between the different styles and battle in real time. To me, I think that's pretty cool. Might not be just the sole reason to get the game on Switch, maybe just for the portability, but still, you could pick up Devil May Cry 3 on pretty much any platform at this point. It's crazy because this game was so good that it really influenced the direction of the Devil May Cry series going forward with Devil May Cry 4 and Devil May Cry 5. There's a lot of influence you can see in those games that could be traced back to Devil May Cry 3, and it's for a very good reason.
Now I can start my business.
Oh, speaking of a kind devil, he finally decided on a name for his shop. It took him quite a while to pick one. Want to know the name? Devil May Cry.
And there you go, everyone. Those are my overall thoughts about Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening. This game is fantastic. It's still probably one of the best, if not the best, in the entire DMC series. I know some people will say Devil May Cry 5 has a very strong argument for it, but at that point, it comes down to personal preference. But either way, those are just my thoughts about Devil May Cry 3. Let me know what you guys think about the game down below in the comment section. Tell me, are you a fan of Devil May Cry 3? Do you like this game? Do you hate this game? Some of your favorite elements about it? Where are the Vergil fans out there? Talk to me about this stuff down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Go ahead and click the boxes on the side to see more videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to go visit my Patreon page for exclusive gaming content that I know you'll really love. Hope you have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.